What if your body, and not your mind, was the one that was deciding whether you feel safe and grounded, whether you should be on edge and mobilized to act, or to be immobilized and shut down for survival? See, that is what the three organizing principles of what Polyvagal Theory reveal. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Men's Collective Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Travis Goodman. I'm a licensed therapist and a mind-body coach. And today we're going to dive a little more deeply into the three organizing principles of Polyvagal Theory. And if you haven't listened to the previous episode, you're going to want to click on this link above to go back to watch that video. If you're on Apple or Spotify, just go to the previous episode to listen to what Polyvagal Theory is for a quick overview. For today, as we dive into the three organizing principles, again, this was developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, and these are the three kind of key main ideas that explain our human experience, all rooted in what Polyvagal Theory is. So the first and the foremost is the hierarchy. Now, this is related to the previous episode from last week, and the hierarchy is around the three main primary states. And so we can't necessarily jump from numb to joyful without passing through safety. See, we have to navigate the ladder, this kind of autonomic ladder. And we, starting off with ventral, again, that first line is fight or flight. If that doesn't solve the threat or deal with it, we get to a state of overwhelm. We then shift down in disassociation, disconnection, immobilization. And then we have to move through sympathetic to move back into ventral. The second is neuroception. See, I love that word, neuroception. I always think of going to a party or a group and having the kind of word of the day and I guess being the cool one to have a fun word. Neuroception to me is this kind of concept that, as Deb Dana said, it's our internal radar. It's the part of us, our nervous system, that's wired to scan our environment. It's our internal surveillance system. It's constantly scanning the environment around us for cues of safety and threat. It's scanning in between people, things like tone of voice or posture, facial expression. It's also scanning within our body. And what it's detecting, again, are cues of safety and cues of threat. And if our nervous system picks up enough cues of safety, it'll essentially communicate subconsciously, we're safe enough to be in ventral grounded. But if it's picking up more cues of threat over safety, it will then shift us quite quickly to a survival state in order, again, to navigate the real and or perceived threat. And the third organizing principle of Polyvagal Theory is co-regulation. And this is where we turn towards relationships, towards safe people, towards people we trust, where we regulate best in connection. This is that kind of biological wiring that we are wired for relationships or wired for connection. You might have heard it. This is where I fully agree with this, that there's no amount of solo meditation or solo practices or solo skill work, no matter what it is, that can fully replace being around someone who's calm, safe, connected nervous system helps settle ours. This is why even when you think about what attachment theory is, when we think of bonding with our primary caregiver, how that creates this kind of co-regulation from parent to child, how a calm parent's presence can help regulate, help navigate a child's dysregulated nervous system. Now, that's not to mean that they perfectly all the time snap into ventral and calm, but it's more about helping that child navigate the waves. And we do the same as adults with safe relationships, with people that have calm nervous systems, that we can reach out to a buddy and say, hey man, I'm having a hard time. I'm kind of stressed and anxious and I'm elevated and what do I do? And I think of a time when I felt that earlier this year, feeling like a failure as a dad. I struggled with sleep. I was up all night and just could not get my mind to stop. And I'm a trained therapist and coach, and I got stuck for a bit. And I remember, and it had not happened in a long time, but for whatever reason, man, something hooked me in, this old wound, and it just pulled me back in to this state of just anxiety, of a lot of sympathetic energy, a lot of kind of flight, and then also some dorsal shutdown because it just got too overwhelming. And I've kind of vacillated through that for about a week until I called a few buddies of mine, actually. And as I began to kind of share the story of where I was stuck, their really grounded, calm presence, who they were, really brought a ton of relief to my own nervous system. And all that shame of not being enough and failing and anxiety really began to dissipate. Now, I still had to deal with the problem. That it didn't take care of the problem in my life. But what it did was it helped me get to a more grounded ventral space through co-regulation, helped me move to that autonomic ladder out of sympathetic and dorsal into a more ventral state where I could think more critically, where I can solve the problem. And I was able to pick up that safe connection with my friends. And it really helped me reorient myself, get a solid footing, and take the steps necessary to address that issue I was facing in my life. And I was doing all the things in the time, meditating and praying and movement, but it just wasn't enough. And those relationships really were the change makers. For men, this is huge. Really, for all of us, this is huge. And many of us were taught, I think, to go at it alone, to not reach out to relationships, but to grind and push through stress, especially men by and large. And I know it's a general statement, but what I hear time and time again is that's pretty much what's been taught to us as men. But I want to posit, and really I'm taking from the great work of Dr. Porges and many before him and after him, is that really co-regulation is a strength. And co-regulation, I would argue, and I'm paraphrasing Dr. Porges, is that it's the science behind why, like brotherhood, relationships, mentorship, or supportive partner, why that helps us feel grounded, because it's directly tied to our nervous system. And so I want you to think this week, right now, in this moment, I want you to think of one person, and you might have more, but I want you to think of at least one person where you feel calm and grounded around them. Their presence just has this energy about them. And I'd argue that it's not a coincidence. I would argue that it's your nervous system recognizing safety in them, which then in a way is kind of borrowing that for your own nervous system to rely on. And so with that said, this is the three kind of organizing principles of what polyvagal theory is, which helps orient us. And again, if you haven't listened or watched the previous episode on kind of what polyvagal theory is, you're going to want to watch that and listen to it. And if you're looking for more, if you're looking to work with me through therapy or coaching, go to travisgoodman.lmft.com. Link will be in the description below. Stay tuned for next week, where I'm going to go through a few quick polyvagal informed practices to help us move toward ventral, move us toward calm, move us toward grounding our nervous systems. And so you want to stick around for that. But until next time, have a good day.